afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Zon Academy. I'm so excited to have Jimmy Stegall join us today. Jimmy is a CDT, and he is an educator and a trainer for Here to Serve. And he is talking about an easy path to FDA validated abutments in your lab. So this is going to be a really good one for you if you are or thinking about planning on milling custom abutments. Jimmy has prepared some poll questions for us. I'm going to launch two of them as we get started. We'd really love this to be interactive. So please, if you wouldn't mind, when I put them up there, just give us your answer. And then at the end, I will let Jimmy know what everybody was thinking. We will have a special Q&A at the very end. So if you have any questions, just type them in by using the icon at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be able to answer those at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to turn this over to Jimmy.
Thanks, Fran. Thanks for having me again. You know, thinking about milling abutments in the laboratory was never a real option for me once I looked into it, and this was 15, 20 years ago. I just couldn't figure out how I could go through all the hoops and jump through all the loops to make that happen. It was pretty challenging in my mind. And, as things changed and modified, I started hearing and learning about other ways that if you wanted to mill your own abutments, it was a little simpler because people put some things together. But I never really understood the method that we'll talk about today. We're going to talk about the FDA a little bit, about some history and how things happen. But there's going to be plenty of time for questions. But in my partnership with Des, I've learned a whole lot more, and it's actually pretty exciting for me. And I would be giving it a solid look. Now, I'm a fan of custom abutments overall. So the poll question was asking you guys, do you do custom mostly, half and half, whatever. And I can say that once CAD/CAM abutments became popular, and we moved away from the the UCLA hand cast gold to titanium foundations, and moved into CAD/CAM, that's when I started doing mostly custom abutments, and I became a bigger fan every month that passed because of the ease. I called it the big red button in the lab. That we literally, when things got tight and we didn't have people that could take the time to design them, we just sent them to an outsourced designer, like Atlantis. Atlantis was our primary go-to, and that you just couldn't get any easier. So all I had to do was teach somebody how to scan, right? Get the analog model done and get the scan post in there and teach them how to scan and send. And that was just easy for us, and it worked for a long time, but it's expensive. And so I understand the appeal. And when I started with Des and I started looking into what they were doing, and they gave me the full scoop, I got real excited again, because I know there are a lot of you that I've met in the past that really want to do this for cost savings or control, or keeping it in the house kind of thing. And so you're going to be pretty excited about these solutions, and there are several people around the globe that have put this package together. But what we're going to talk about, right, is where it all stems from. And the FDA is really serious about implants and implant abutments. They have hired more people for inspections. They've done more inspections, opened more offices around implants and implant abutments than anything else in the last 50 years. And if you provide custom abutments and you advertise that on the internet, you're likely to see or hear from the FDA at some point, because they're monitoring it really close, and they're just wanting to make sure that implant manufacturers and implant providers and treatment providers for implants are not harming any patients. So I appreciate regulation, but it makes it hard, right? Especially when the federal government gets involved. And it can get really complicated really fast, right? But overall, you need to understand some basics, right? They're what we call class 1 and class 2. Now, class 1, they don't require any 510K for the most part. These are things like analogs and scan posts. These are things that we're going to put in the mouth. They're not going to be in there very long. right? We're taking them right back out. And so they don't require any F10K, 510K clearances. But then you have uh, class two. And what you see here are the categories within class two, right? Implants themselves, of course, they need to be regulated. We need to make sure we're not doing anything harmful. But then the other two is kind of where it gets a little cloudy. And the way the FDA looks at it now, this is not the way most of us in the industry would look at it, but they look at it as non-digital and digital. And these are, we call them abutments, and there are, of course, many types of abutments. But when you think about MUAs, pre-manufactured parts, right? These are already done. The FDA looks at these and they call them non-digital because they assume that they're already completely done and we're not going to be modifying them. And we know that there are some non-digital abutments that we will modify manually sometimes, but primarily this is the way the FDA categorizes these. And for the most part, they're right, right? I'm not going to really cut on an MUA. So that's one category. The other category are the digital abutments, and this is where tie bases reside, and this is where the pre-milled blanks reside. And the FDA is really concerned about these because these are things that we are very likely to modify. So some manufacturer can make them and they can have the FDA clearance to make them, but the things that's going to be done afterwards, either by a milling center or a dental laboratory, right, the FDA is concerned. So they want to maintain these standards for these parts and pieces and the processes. Now, this was the accreditation or the FDA clearance that, frightened me, that just said that's just too much. And, I called it for the longest times the QMS accreditation. And if you've looked at this at all, you know what's involved in establishing a quality management system, the paperwork, the mass of three-ring binders, the number of audits that have to be done continually and permanently, right? Every year, every 6 months, you've got to go through this audit process. When you do all this, you're called a validated milling center, and it certainly has full FDA accreditation. But there's a lot of post accreditation approval processes like traceability, everything that you do, the materials, the lot numbers, every process that you do has to be traceable. And then the workforce has to be highly skilled, highly trained, and traceable. The actual workforce in this accreditation is part of the QMS system. The QMS path is difficult, challenging, expensive, right? There is this alternative, and the FDA calls it digital dentistry workflow, as opposed to what they call the other workflow, which would be a validated milling center. So places like Atlantis and True Abutment, I mean, those are all validated milling centers. They've done what they need to do with the FDA. A lot of work, a lot of expense. And laboratories, and a couple of laboratories that I've known have done this, but it certainly is a challenge. It's something I never really wanted to tackle. Had I been more aware of this digital dentistry workflow, as the FDA calls it, or what Desk calls P&P or plug and play, um, I certainly would have, taken a close look at it because it is truly a simple cookbook type of process. While there's a little bit of documentation involved, basically you've got to track who you send the things to. But other than that, everything else has been done for us. So we just have to pick from the list of validated equipment, software, and materials that Beth and others have gone through the effort to put together. And once we do that, once we follow that recipe, we're 100% compliance, and we don't have to worry about anything like audits or expensive redos of paperwork over and over, and no QMS system, or even our staffing can be a lot simpler because the process is what's validated, not the people. So they call it plug and play, and it is following a very specific workflow using very specific validated equipment and materials. And once we do that, we're 100% compliant, right? So it all starts in the digital realm, right? We've got to make sure that we have the right components, but we have to use the right software to manage the components in the workflows. So that involves libraries, of course. That involves the software itself, both on the design side and the CAM side. And what it does is it gives labs another option, right? If you want to do this in your laboratory, this is a much simpler workflow. And it involves some specific equipment. You may or may not have it. Certainly, these VHF mills are very common, and I see them in a lot of labs. And so it's not a big jump to say, oh, I've got to have this really expensive mill or this really high end thing just for this. No, you really don't. These are used widely in our industry today. And what DES has done is, done all the testing and validation and created the tooling so that we can do this in the laboratory. So let's look at it, right? And what that recipe is. So obviously you need the blanks, right? And they have to go through the FDA validation, which of course DES has done. But in our world, in the day-to-day world, it starts with scanners. And in the dental office, obviously, we've got to have a scanner there if the doctor's going to put a scan post in and say, hey, I want a custom abutment on this case. So the validated intraoral scanners right now is Trios and Medit with the Prime Scan and Itero, the validations, they may even be done now. They're close, right? So DES is working to validate those intraoral scanners. As far as the lab scanners go, it's right now only in the 3Shape lab scanners. So whether it's the E series or the 2000 series, both are validated. So that's the scanners. The software, 3Shape dental system with Implant Studio and exocad, right? That pretty much covers 99% of the market. So we're good there. And then on the CAM software, dental CAM, dental CNC, hyperdent, and Mailbox, but Mailbox only for zirconia right now. So you have to be aware of what's out there, of course, and you want to make sure you have the right things in your lab to do this. Milling machines, VHF, fully done, VersaMill. Roland is validated for this process, but only to mill the zirconia. So, of course, you can mill the zirconia in the VHF and the VersaMill, and eventually Roland will be validated for the blanks, the titanium blanks as well. But right now, it's just the VHF and the VersaMill. I know that Ceramill and Digital Dental and MCX5 are in the queue. They may be already even working on these validations. So, as time goes on, DES is just going to continue to expand the menu or the recipe list we can pick from. Zerlux, Argon, Amann Gerbach, Zirconia, Vita Zirconia, all validated part of the process. And of course, the DES titanium pre-mills. And then the cements, to put the restorations onto these custom abutments that you would mill is the multi-link hybrid from Avaclar. So every step in the process has gone through validation. And as long as you are using these, then you have the FDA clearance that we hope for. So again, right, the scanners, the Trios, the 3Shape, software, 3Shape and exocad, dental cam, CNC, VHF mills, argon, Zon, zirconia, and of course the DES pre-mills. Let's talk about it a little bit more. I mean, we're all aware of these scanners, right? Been around for a long time. We understand them, but it's not going to require the doctor buy a new scanner. Even the software versions goes way back. So there's no problem with what the doctor has, as long as it can scan the scan post, which the DES scan post, by the way, are pretty awesome. And the scanners that we see in every lab, right? The 3Shape, the E series, or the D2000s, fine. Software, again, 3Shape, the dental module, the implant module, and of course the exocad all have the ability to download the DES DME. So getting the files that we need to do this process are also very easy. They're easily available on the DES website. It's simply go to the DES website and download them. So they've done a really good job of digitizing all the files that we need to do these processes and then making them super accessible. And of course, they've been part of the FDA validation process as well. Des took it to a different step as well within the milling machines by creating the tooling and the holders that you might need. And these are awesome as well. I saw them being created and milled right in the Des factory, and they're super accurate. And of course, for all the different milling machines, so that you have everything you need when you're ready to go. And the CAM software, again, the only issue that I've seen, if you have the original VHF CAM software and you're using the VHF built-in CAM software, original one, it's locked to these holders, to these outside holders. And so you will either have to pay a fee to VHF to release it so that you can add an outside holder, or move over to one of these other CAM softwares. And most folks have moved over to the mailbox or the CNC or the Hyperdent. And if you're using those, you have no problems with the holders and the tooling. And then finally, the materials, right? The blanks, there's zirconia. And let's talk a little bit about the Des blanks. There's several things that I really like about these blanks. Number one, grade 5 titanium, which is awesome. And the first thing I noticed was that big bolt on the top. The next thing that they pointed out to me is that interface has the smallest gap, right, or distance or limit, let's say, of where you can mill down to. So I don't know if you noticed in the animation, it was 3/10 of a millimeter. There are not many that can get that close. That means we can mill really, really close to the interface. So this makes this blank more of a true custom abutment, as opposed to milling out of a blank rod of titanium, which is always, going to give you a full-blown tip-to-tip custom option. But this one, let's look at that again, right? Notice when the animation gets, right, that 28 compatibilities, 3/10 of a millimeter, we can get pretty darn close. And most are a lot bigger than that. That large, robust holder really eliminates chatter or movement, which is better for accuracy. Now, if you notice that third one on the right had a channel, I thought that was very cool. They have pre-mills that have a pre-milled angulated screw access channel, which is pretty darn awesome. It comes in two formats, one that orients to the flat and one that orients to the point. So that gives you almost a full compass capability of rotation to get that screw hole pointed in the right direction. That's one of my favorite things about the pre-mills. So, yeah, I cut out some of this because I wasn't sure how long the power was going to be off. But one of the things that impressed me about Des is the level of inspection, quality control, and attention to detail and innovation. I was fortunate enough to visit them in Barcelona, and that's what blew me away as I was watching the manufacturing of all the abutments and the pre-mills and the screws and everything that they make. I think I lost count at 8 different spots where somebody was checking. And honestly, guys, when I went over to Des, I went over to Des with a mindset of, it's a third party parts manufacturer, and that's it. But I left with a whole different respect and perspective about what this group of folks are doing. Their attention to making sure that things are done right and attention to accuracy blew me away. I spent 7 years with Dentsply, and so I was fortunate enough to be able to be inside the Atlantis facility many times, and that place always impressed me as well. And the technology it takes to do all these things is just fascinating and super accurate. And I put Des right up there on that same plane, right? What they're doing is pretty amazing in the number of things they're doing and the compatibility they're doing, but the fact that they spend so much time making sure that it's right, 8 or 9 different inspection points along the way, really gave me a confidence to know that these guys know what they're doing. And they also are really, really eager to just keep expanding, and providing what we as technicians or clinicians might need. And so expanding capabilities of the different mills we can use, providing and creating new parts like their new MUA Plus. That's one of the coolest advancements I've seen in multi-unit abutments in a long, long time. I've really enjoyed using that. So um, the path is really simple, guys, and that is, connect with Des, connect with Zon. Zon handles their stuff, and say, look, I want to, take a look at this. I have a VHF mill, and so, what do I need to do? And then they can walk you right through it. But it's a real simple process. I'd like to register with the FDA, as a pass-through entity, and the tracking is just, where did I send the part? Other than that, it's just make sure that you have the right software, the right scanner, the right mill, the right parts, the right cement, the right zirconia. And if you're using those pieces, right, in the workflow that Des will provide you, then you have the FDA clearance and you can confidently, move forward. You can confidently explain that to your customers, and the costs are absolutely reasonable, and you can mill your own abutment. So I will open it up to any questions, and let Fran dig in here and see.
Yes. Well, first, I want to thank everybody for hanging tight. This was
And
great
the
that you were
internet's
able
still
to
moving
stay on with
kinda slow, and
us.
I'm missing
I'm sure it
things.
was
And,
stressful for you,
here's the
Jimmy, but
contact info for me. This, QR code takes you to my website. If anybody wants to follow up with me later, if you need some training or, somebody to present for you, that's kinda what I'm doing now, and enjoying that very much. And, leaving right after this to go spend 2 days at a lab to, train on a little bit of implant, but mostly on digital dentures. It's a real joy to be able to do things like that, including this webinar here. So always great to partner with Zon. They put on some really good shows. But let's open it up for questions, Fran, and see what, if any, there are needs out there.
perfect. We're open for questions. So if you have any, just go to that
You're
Q&A
still muted, Fran.
icon.
I
I'm
can't hear
sorry.
you.
Can you hear
Maybe
me?
they can, but I can't.
I just want to let everybody know that the Q&A is open. So there's a little icon at the bottom of your screen that you can click on and type a question into Jimmy. But we do have results from the
Oh, it's
poll,
me.
and it seems like most people are,
Okay, let me
not.
stop and share. Let's try this.
I'm sorry, do you hear
It's
me,
mine.
Jimmy?
Give
I
me a
hope you hear me
second.
now. Are you able to hear me? Okay. So all of our panelists can hear me, but I'm not sure if Jimmy can. But 100% of our customers are not milling custom abutments in-house. And it seems that 26 to 50% of our customers are milling custom abutments, and about 25% I'm sorry, 67% are doing it from 0 to
I'm
20.
gonna join on my phone so I can hear Fran. I don't know what's
Okay.
going on. I think the power went out on my.
Recording in progress.
Okay, perfect. Can you hear me now, Jimmy?
I can. I can.
Okay,
Absolutely.
good. Good. All right. So it seems that I was letting everybody know that as far as who is currently milling custom abutments in-house, 100% are not at this time. And the percentage of implant abutments that are custom from 0 to 25%, we have 67% of our customers that are doing them custom, and the 26 to 50%, it's 33% of the customers that are on with us today. that are doing them custom.
Huh.
And as far as outsourcing, it seems that 67% are doing, they're outsourcing someplace else, and about 33% for Atlantis.
Okay, I was a little surprised at the number for the small number for custom abutments at all. So I'm assuming that means most folks are using tie bases, stock parts.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was surprised too. But now we have all this great information. So maybe more people will start to use and start milling in-house for sure.
And now I really want to do my best practices for single tooth abutments seminar because we talk a lot about the tissue and emergence profile and how to get it proper and how to maintain it and how to restore it. And it all centers around customization. And stock parts are great, and we can do a fair amount of things with stock parts, but we can't do a true custom emergence profile. And to me, that's the biggest reason to do a custom abutment, is just to make sure that the tissue is managed properly and maintained properly so we don't get that loss, right? The worst case scenario is a patient walks in and pulls their lip up and you can see the interface between the abutment and the implant because of tissue loss. And that is more common with stock parts than it is with custom parts. So I'm a fan of a custom abutment, however we do it, whether we mill it ourselves or let somebody else do it for us. I think all of them should be done that way.
So again, if you have any questions for Jimmy, you can type them in for us, but I want to let you know what's happening next on Zahn Academy. Next week, December 11th, Dan Thornton is coming back, and he's going to be speaking to us on the total digital workflow on denture conversion. So that should be a really good one. And then on 12/17, VHF is with us, and they're going to be talking to us about their fleet of mills. So everything is open right now for registration, and we'd love to have you join us for that. And again, I want to thank everybody for being so patient with us and our little power outage that we had. Jimmy, it's always a pleasure to be with you. We appreciate you here at Zahn. We value you, and just a little slip up, not your fault, but everybody stayed on with us, and we're just so thankful for that. So if you have any questions, you can send them over to us at zondental@henryschein.com, and I will get those questions over to Jimmy, or you can go directly to Jimmy from his website. So have a great day, everybody. Jimmy, thank you again, and we'll see
Thanks,
everybody
Fran.
here next week on Zahn Academy. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.